Hello and welcome back to the next One Piece review and discussion. We are back after our week-long break to jump right back into these final chapters of the flashback. We are nearing the end and seeing what happened on that fateful day when Harald passed away and what actually went down in the castle. And this chapter is setting it all up. Like, we see it unfolding. There are things that are literally what it's leading to, what is going to be revealed in the following chapters, which I cannot wait for. Like, we've been waiting so long for some of this stuff that it's going to be great to finally see it unfold, and to think that this is like definitely the part now that Loki is explaining to Harald and Luffy what happened and what we are gonna find out. So, without further ado, chapter 1169. I have to die as soon as possible. A mouthful of a title there. Now, there is no cover story request because we get this absolutely stunning colour spread of the Rocks pirate. Now, these guys are like suited up, they look clean. This is a very, very cool colour spread, and it's giving me the vibe of Strong World, you know, when all the Straw Hats showed up and they were all dressed. That is the vibe, because obviously that was the film Shiki was introduced in, and we see Shiki in the back with his suit on. I'm getting that sort of vibe, and like the parallel and crossover between when we started to kind of first be introduced to a Rocks pirate to now we get to meet them all and we see them all here. This is a lovely, lovely colour spread. But we've got Elbaph to now discuss. So, last we had left off, it was the very, very sad, very emotional chapter of Ida's passing. It was the snowfall in Elbaph, and Loki was in prison. Harald had finally, made that connection and that covenant with the world government. He'd returned. He was talking to Ida about all the trade now, and things that they were planning on doing, and she was so excited for the future of Elbaph, and she wanted to make sure he kept that warrior pride, and she thought that was important from their tradition. But equally, the new stuff they have established is really nice to hear. And Harald is back and forward, and they ultimately get to a point where Harald is like, I'm doing all this so that one day we can then start travelling again together. But unfortunately, she doesn't make it. Hyruden and the new giant warrior pirates couldn't find a healer in time, or someone that would be able to help. And it was a very somber chapter to that point. Everyone was devastated. Loki was in jail in the underworld, and even he was like shedding tears, like he was distraught. His mother, he had declared a chapter earlier, Ida was the only mother he'd ever known. So it was very sad to see. And then in the coming year, we had the government, the world government, the five elders summon Harald to Mariejois into the room of, control what they have, and said that Shanks had gone missing, but not so much missing as in he didn't turn up, as he was next in line to form the Depths Covenant, which is the next level of the three covenant levels, and he's gone missing. No one had heard from him. So you know what, snooze you lose. Harald, you're up. This is your opportunity now to ascend to the Depths Covenant, and in doing so, as you've wanted, Elbaph will become a recognised alliance or affiliate country with the world government. And he was ecstatic. He was like, sign me up, I'm there. He was eager. And then he got to meet Eve, and he was taken aback. He was confused as to why someone was sitting on the empty throne, but the Great One had spoken, and he was going to bestow all this power onto Harald, and in doing so, the Elbaph warriors could join the world government as a country. So the tattoo that they have branded on their arm to show that they have a Shadow Covenant received like some demonic horns, and in doing so, he had now attained the ability of immortality. Mars and all the other five elders were talking about this level of power he's now attained, the power of immortality, the power to connect with the Great One, with Eam. And Eam's only sort of task at this stage was to go back to Elbaph and to carve an abyssal pentagram into the throne room to forge a connection between Eam and Harald. So following that order, he left. He was ecstatic. He greeted everyone at Elbaph and said, "We finally been recognised," and everyone was excited. He carved the pentagram, and when the connection formed, Eam gave one order: to turn all of the warriors of Elbaph over to the world government to form an army. And Harald was like, "No, whoa, that's not what I wanted." And in the following moments, Harald realised how fucked he was. And his body became Eam's control. He'd lost all ability to do anything himself other than to speak and to have his own thoughts. He was realising he was no longer in control, and Eam was forcing him towards the pentagram to finally, do what needs to be done to summon whoever, or even to just go tell the warrior pirates and take control of Harald's body. So Harald, in these moments, knows that he has messed up completely, summons the guards and says to fetch Harald and Loki. "I don't care if Loki's in prison now. Get him out, bring him here, we need him." So we pick up in this moment, but not in the castle. We're over at Gabon's house. Gabon and Shanks at this stage are still chilling in that pool. So we had part of this scene much earlier in the flashback of when we saw Shanks with the shallow mark on his arm, and they were discussing stuff and having met Harald when we were first being introduced. And they're discussing that Captain Roger has a son. This is when Shanks is finding out about Ace, and Gabon's like, "Yeah, you know what, it was news to me, but he told Garp," which is kind of weird that Roger wouldn't tell his own crew, let alone wouldn't even tell Gabon, but he told Garp, which shows something there. But Garp ended up, telling the guys. So Gabon found out, and now this is when Shanks is finding out. And they're like, he'd managed to, have it rough to begin with, but he's managed to keep away from the Marines, keep his head low. And Shanks is buzzing. He's like, "Wow, I've got a little brother. This is great. This is how it is." And Gabon's like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense. You and Buggy were our sons, so we're kind of then passing it along that way." And he's like, "Wow, Captain Roger's blood in this young boy's veins. He could be the next generation's king of the pirates. Wouldn't that be great?" And Gabon's like, "Whoa, you know that this isn't a hereditary thing. It isn't passed on. On top of that, the one peoples, they usually don't make it to the top with all those expectations they have put on them." And he's like, "Oh yeah, I guess so." And he's like, "Well, the world's actually more fun that way, So Shanks seems pretty happy. And meanwhile, while this is all unfolding, we go back to the castle. Loki and Harald have just arrived. We saw this happening. We know this. They burst into the throne room, but they haven't got there yet, because just before they enter, we greet Harald and all the guards, and one of the guards is just dead on the floor. Is being stabbed on the ground, bleeding out, and everyone is like, "Harald, King Harald, why did you just do that? What is going on?" And Harald looks down and he's like, "Did I just attack this guard?" And he doesn't say, none of this is out loud. This is a real twisted internal monologue he's having now. He's going through his brain, he's racking it off. He's like, did I do that? Why did my body move on its own? Oh shit, is it because of that bastard's orders? He wants me to erase anyone who's in the way. He wants me to form an army of warriors, and Ian presses into his mind again, forcing that command more and more. And he's like, my body won't allow it. I can't go against that order now. I have to follow it through. But my mind is going to break, all because of what he wants. Like, what have I done? Like, I'm now a poison to my country. Elbaph will begin to rot as long as I'm alive. Everything I have done, everything I have built, everything would have been for nothing. The 114 years of life, and he's thinking back of everything he's done across his travels to get to this stage, all the sacrifice, all the time spent, ripping off his horns, all to get to this moment where he's just been betrayed, and he's like, I need to die as soon as possible. And he turns to his guards and he's like, you have to kill me now. That is like an order. And he's like, hurry before this thing takes over. And he's like, I can't be enslaved. I can't stand by. This is when we've seen it before. Loki and Ja Rule enter, and like 10 spears are pierced into Harald's chest. He is completely skewered from all angles, and Loki and Ja Rule, rightfully so, are freaking out. They're like, what's going on? Like, why is the king being stabbed? What is this? And then Harald's like, Jesus Christ. So this is what they mean by being immortal. I'm starting to even regenerate from these wounds. And he picks his sword up and just cleaves the guards who have encircled them. They get sent flying back. And Ja Rule and Loki are like, holy fucking shit, what have we just walked into? And before we see anything else, we get a sort of explanation again, just to remind ourselves, and this is back with Shanks and Gabon. The conversation carries on, and Shanks is explaining, look, Harald and me are in a shallow covenant with the big one, the great one, the holy one, the one who sits at the top in the Holy Land. And he's talking so casually, and Gabon isn't like surprised or reacting in a way that he seems like this is the first time he's hearing it. He seems to be just going, okay, yeah, cool. He's just following along. And Shanks explains, he shows the tattoo, and he's like, look, this is a shallow waters covenant, as long as we've got this, if I'm close to Ym, or if I'm close to Marishwar, then I can't defy his orders, but there's a limit to the range. And Gabon's like, okay, that's a bit of a strange power. And Shanks says, look, if we're outside the range with just this low level covenant, then we can't be influenced, we can't be heard, we can't be affected by the power, and that's then why we can have conversations outside. And he's like, look, when we left the Holy Land finally, I was able to talk to Harald, and we see a brief flashback as Shanks is explaining this, and Harold's like, that's where I knew you from, the red hair pirates. So when Shanks was 26 or something, when he was seen in Marishwar, he was actually already established as part of the red hair pirates, but had decided to infiltrate into Marishwar to get as much information as he could, find out what he needed to. And then, before it got too risky, he dipped. So he's like, look, I realised, it was happening, there's the God's Night, Elbaph would enter this alliance, when Harald ascended, and it would make him happy, but he would forge that higher level contract, but it would be a problem. Anyone who gains that level of power gets superhuman strength and immortality, and they have the power to summon the abyss and travel long distances, which is the pentagrams. But in exchange for all those great boons, the drawback is You will no longer be able to go against the Great One's order. No matter how far you are, you have to follow those orders. So, the deeper connected you are with Ian, you're basically his slave. You follow what he does to the letter, no defiance, no matter where you are in the world, his voice will reach you no matter what. And interesting that Shanks does indeed say his voice. We still don't know, the gender of Eam and what that reveal will be, but Shanks is saying, his voice will reach you no matter what, no matter where you are. But he's now worried because he's like, Harald is going to fall into their hands. No doubt he wanted to, but those greedy bastards are never going to give him what he wants. They won't keep that promise. And Gabon's like, you know what? Yeah, you're right. Harald can't join the world government. This is, if he joins the Gods Knight, it's pretty bad. And then the hacky explosion happens. The castle ignites. There is black lightning flying everywhere. Gabon and Shanks are like we gotta go here. And we go back to the clash between Loki and Harald, the only one currently in the room who can stand face to face with Harald, because these giants, remember, are like tiny in comparison to Harald and Loki, who are more ancient giant blood descendants. And Loki's trying to wrap his head around what's happening. How did he not die from the stab wounds? Why was he trying to kill the gods? It's like 20 questions currently from Loki, like trying to get some grasp of the situation. He's like, where are you getting this power from? What's happening? Your rule is like, get a hold of yourself. Come on, man, get a grip. And there is more guards being called, everyone to the throne room. The king's lost his mind. And Ja Rule and Loki manage to pin Harald to the ground. They both grab an arm each. They're like knees on him, pinned him down, like, explain right now. And Harald is like barely getting sentences out. It's like short bursts. He's still in control. And he's like, there's something you need to know. I have done something unforgivable. He's like, look, I'm not going to be able to stay sane here. Not for long anyway, so you need to listen. Do exactly what I say. And Harald is telling them now his final words. Like, these are the final moments of Harald's conscious, sentient thought before Eam infects his entire mind. And he's like, you are going to tell everyone what happened here. You are going to explain everything. That I attacked the guards, that all the dirty work I had done, that what I had done to become an affiliated country, to make Elbaph where it is, tell them everything, and tell them that I was deceived, that everything ended up this way, and that is where we're at. They wanted me to hand Elbaph over and sell our people out as warriors, but I didn't. I should have realised. And Loki's like, who the hell were you deceived by? Like, from the beginning, like, what's happening is like, they were never going to grant me that wish. They were never going to give it to me. And he turns to Ja Rule and he's like, look, you have to make Loki eat Elbaph's treasure. And the whole room is like, what? And he's like, no one right now can defeat me. I've received the power of a god. And I never want Elbaph to become enslaved or be controlled by the government. That's why Loki, and he looks directly at Loki then, and he's like, you have to kill me. You have to take the throne. I'm the worst king of Elbaph. I am a fool. Tell everyone, kill me and make me your name. He's like, I don't care what happens. I don't care about my reputation anymore. I don't care what people think even after I die. What matters right now, the only thing that matters, was Elbaph's future. And like, to have that final moment of his father You know, think how much Loki has lost. And his own father now is saying nothing matters other than the future of this country. Like, his final wish. And for Harald himself, how devastating it is to have poured so much time, energy, effort, love into what he wanted for his own country and people, all for it to be taken away by Eam, and he wasn't going to stand for it. This was like his final act, and then he snaps. His final thing was saying, Loki, you are the only one who can do this, before Harald erupts with just superhuman, super giant strength and just plows through Ja Rule and Loki, sends them flying. He plows through half the guards, and the guards outside are like, wow, it's getting really rowdy in there. And Harald says through the door, he's like, there's some criminals that I'm dealing with in the castle, seal all the doors. And they're like, shit, fucking roger that, sir, yeah, yes, king. And they lock the throne room doors, and Harald is getting like stabbed by guards, and he's like, what are you doing? He just grabs the dude, throws him, and he's like, I am indeed no longer King Harald. I am a servant of the Great One. So, interesting difference at this moment. Eam's not taken possession like we've seen at the moment with Gunko. So, on Elbaph, Eam is in Gunko's body doing the manipulation. This is still Harald. Eam has not taken over, but Eam has given an order that he has to follow. So he's become brainwashed and has to, you know, follow Eam's order and is now a servant. So he's lost his mind, and he's like, no one's leaving. No one who knows this is allowed to leave. I'm going to deal with you all. And the dude that he threw is on the ground telling everyone to run, and Harald just crushes his head, just steps on him, crushes him, carries on walking, and he's like, I'm going to offer this country to Eam. You are not going to survive this. And your rule is like, I'm going to try and hold him off. Loki, go and eat the fruit. Go into the treasure room right now. This is the only thing we can do. And he's like, why do I have to eat a devil fruit? You know, those things make me lose the ability to swim. Why would I want that? You know, why is my dad being all weird? Like, and he's still questioning everything. And Harald is like, don't you dare eat that fruit, Loki. You know, that's mine. That's my treasure. I'm the one to eat it. And Loki's like, look, you just told me to eat it. Like, what's going on? Yorul begins to try and hold him off, and it's of no use. And Harald is like getting absolutely ripped to bits by Yorul. He's like, if you were to eat that fruit, Harald, the world would end. Loki, he is not to get that fruit. So Loki doesn't want to eat the fruit, but Yorul is like, Harald cannot eat that fruit. Whatever it is, whatever power it holds, if it was in Harald's possession, the world's done. We're cooked. But this is the moment we've seen, and Harald spins around and throws and thrusts his sword through Jorul's skull. And he's like, oh, Jorul, you gave me that legendary sword all that time ago. I'm returning it. And that's the sword that Jorul has since had in his head all this time, that his helmet protected him from. So we know he survives it, but this is how the sword ends up there, from Harald's superhuman strength throwing it through. And just as he's leaving the throne room, Loki is like, I'm going to eat the fruit and I'm taking Ragnir. So Harald is in pursuit, in chase. Loki's screaming, running, but not before Gabon and Shanks come in to stop Harald in his tracks. They really do not want to let him get to Loki, especially. And they see Harald on the floor. He's like, look, I'm fine, my helm's protecting me. We need to stop Harald. He can't get close to Loki. Things are bad. And they realise what's happening in this moment when Harald gets back up, recovers from his wounds. And he's like, Shanks. You know, this is what an immortal body is like. It's perfect. You know, this is what it feels like to be truly superior. And Shanks realises, he's like, oh, fuck, like, he took the Covenant. Is there a way to break the order that he has to follow? The final panels of this chapter are the chains of the treasure room falling to the floor and Loki bursting in, seeing the small treasure chest on the ground that contains the forbidden fruit that is passed down through generations of Elbaph. Somehow, with how fruits are reincarnated, Elbaph can make sure this one stays within, you know, the royal family, I guess. But there is a big hammer that we've seen Loki wielding. We see Ragnir is also just perched behind the chest in the treasure room. And as Loki goes to approach the chest, the hammer itself comes to life and flies at Loki himself. Just leaps off the ground, full Mjolnir style, and just launches itself. And it makes like a noise. I don't know if it's like speaking or something happens or it's just part of the attack. But Loki's question, like, who's there, from the noise and like the hammer throwing itself. So are we about to get a very sentient weapon that, you know, Loki's now going to have to like manage and control, and then he also gains the power of Ragnir? I can't decide if the fruit is real yet. So this is where the chapter ends. The surprise attack from Ragnir is happening. We've been building up to this fruit, and I don't know whether it's a red herring from Oda, that there is a fruit in there and we're fine, or Ragnir is actually the really broken, you know, attack weapon here, and the chest is actually going to be empty. I doubt it. I think there is a fruit. I do think Loki's about to gain some mythical power that I can't wait to see. But he's then also going to have a moving hammer, a sentient hammer, I guess. It's Mjolnir. Well, it's the One Piece version of Mjolnir, Ragnir, which is going to be interesting. But there is no break next week. But I do think, because of obviously it's Christmas and stuff, I think Shonen's on a break. So we may get the spoilers ahead of time, but the chapter doesn't officially release until a week after. But we are in these final moments, and we should see what this fruit is next chapter, and we're going to see what Loki has in store and how he's going to take down Harald in this moment. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Let me know what you thought of this chapter, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.